It's Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. It may be the State of the Union Day, but we're also going to give a State of the Union of Detroit sports on the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk of Eno and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, Al Beaton, longtime Detroit podcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, is the man who is, I would call him our Eastern Michigan insider, and that would be Greg Eno. Greg, how's things?
Somebody has to be that, right? Al, first of all, I want to say that the state of the knee jerks is strong.
Yes. I'm waiting for you to take your shoe off and start pounding it on the table there. So
it better be strong after doing it for 14 years.
Oh God, don't even remind me. Yeah.
Good grief. I am Greg Eno for my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. You can check me out every week there. My latest piece was about the late Bobby Beathard, the great football executive who passed away last week.
Yes.
Thought it was kind of fitting that Bobby, in a way, it's fitting that he passed away during Super Bowl week, if you will, because of how many times he was there himself as an executive and how many times his teams won the Super Bowl.
And what a train wreck that organization is now.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Check me out there. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Very happy to announce, as promised, that we were going to have Eastern Michigan football coach Chris Creighton here on the program, coming off of a dynamic 41-27 win over San Jose State back in December in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, the first bowl win for Coach Creighton in 5 or 6 tries, I think. And so we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about his 2023 recruiting class and a bunch of other stuff in about a 30-minute interview we pre-recorded with Coach. And so we'll roll that. But before we do any of that, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? I'm not going to give Al any prizes on this because this person, Al, made his name in the world of football. He was born on this date, I think, in 1969 or 8. He formerly coached at Drake University and is the current coach of the Eastern Michigan Eagles. So who do you think it is?
Oh, God. God damn it, Greg. You and your trick questions.
Yeah, no prize tonight because Coach Creighton is here, and it is his birthday, if you can imagine.
And I was going to guess Ron English.
Oh my God. Well, Coach, seriously, this is Coach Creighton's birthday today, the 7th. He was kind enough to join us despite that. He's even got another speaking engagement after hours. So popular guy on his birthday. I'm not sure when he's going to have a chance to enjoy his birthday with his family, but let's play. I don't know how many times we've had Coach on the show now. It must be 7 or 8 times by now, but let's play this interview with Coach we did earlier for you. It's about 30 minutes and enjoy that right now.
You know, Greg, when you asked about the defensive coordinator opening, I could have swore the next question was, how do I submit my resume? I'm telling you.
I was going to ask that question. They said he filled the job. So
yeah.
It's too late.
No, it is so much fun talking. No, the program is really on such a high right now, coming off a bowl game win, a highly ranked recruiting class, and obviously, and just the profile of the program is just rising right now, and you can reflect that in talking to Coach.
Yeah, and I was kind of proud of us that neither of us asked that worn out question that we seem to always ask him, which is, when are you going to leave?
Yeah.
But we didn't ask him that because I know what he was. You would just give the same answer as he always does, of course. But no, really, it is a that's why I wrote way back in September when Eastern went into the desert and beat Arizona State, which precipitated the firing of Sun Devils coach Herm Edwards. And I said, and part of my beef with that was that the Arizona State people were like, this is embarrassing. How can you lose to a team like Eastern? I'm like, wait, hold a time out here. This is not an embarrassment to lose to a team like that.
I don't think it's an embarrassment to lose to any MAC team at this point.
Right. And so, and as it turned out, that was back in September, but as it turned out, Eastern, indeed won 9 games, including the bowl game, won the Michigan MAC. They won shared the Western Division MAC title with Toledo. So, I mean, No, even back in September, I don't think it was an embarrassment. And certainly in
Mhm.
hindsight, after you saw the season the Eastern had,
Yeah.
it was definitely not an embarrassment to lose to Eastern at all. But yeah, no, you're right. The program is in great shape. I can't believe he's going to start his 10th season there. I really
Yeah.
can't. It's unbelievable. But you're right. Good to talk to Coach. Always good to talk to him. So, and that was nice of him to share that personal anecdote with Coach Nethery, which I didn't know they had that kind of relationship. So that was fun.
Well, I'm here. Michigan might be looking for an analyst, so maybe you could put your resume in there. So. All right. All right. With that, we got a podcast to knock out. We got some topics to touch on. Obviously, there's been a big shakeup at Bally Sports, the Tigers broadcast team. Also, Bally Sports is in financial trouble. That's which may affect a lot of the teams that are being paid by them. Along with the Tigers farm system being considered one of the worst in baseball, it's going to be an interesting, especially because pitchers and catchers report in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, we'll be talking a lot more baseball very, very soon. Obviously, there's a lot of Red Wings news coming off the All-Star break. Again, more Dylan Larkin, and there is now a contract out there that is very comparable from a very comparable player to him that could have set the bar. So we'll touch on that. And also, there's a lot of Jacob Vrana rumors going on. And we'll see what else we get to if we touch a little bit of Pistons trade deadline and maybe the Pro Bowl. We'll see. So with that, Greg, let's start what's going on with Bally Sports, because that could be a very long-term story that could really affect both all the Tigers, the Pistons, and the Red Wings, and specifically the Ilitch Empire, considering they own 2 of those teams. But Diamond Sports Group, that's essentially a subsidiary of one of the worst corporations in the world, Sinclair, the Sinclair Broadcast Group or something like that, but they're a far right wing, essentially, corporation that owns a lot of TV stations. Well, to kind of set the stage here, when Fox was required to sell off their regional sports networks, essentially Disney bought almost all of Fox except for Fox TV Network and Fox News. And part of the deal was that the regional sports networks, Fox Sports Detroit, and so on, had to be sold off separately. That Disney could not own them. Probably had let them owning ESPN. So Sinclair bought them and then put them in their own subsidiary called Diamond Sports. Unfortunately, whatever you want to call it, Sinclair bought at the absolute top of the market, spending, I believe, anywhere from $10 to $12 billion. And the vast majority of that was leveraged. So they had to borrow, or they borrowed against it. And then immediately after, this is also during a time when rights fees are exploding because live sports is essentially one of the few things people will not skip in DVR. They will actually watch live. But right after they bought them at the top of the market, COVID hit. Cord cutting became a big deal, and essentially the regional sports networks are on the verge of collapse financially. So, according to Bloomberg, Greg, Bally Sports RSNs could file for bankruptcy protection possibly this month. Bloomberg is reporting that Diamond will probably skip a mid-February $140 million interest-only payment servicing of which the service is $8.6 billion in debt as it prepares for a Chapter 11 restructuring, which essentially means you're going to go into bankruptcy. Diamond has on its books future obligations to pay rights fees of $12.7 billion. That would include the Pistons and the Tigers and Red Wings. And the Tigers and Red Wings just signed a new deal with them, I believe, for $50 million a year. They have TV contracts with 42 teams. And the fear now is that Sinclair / Diamond may walk away from those contracts amid bankruptcy, or I think best case scenario, they try to restructure those contracts and cut the rights fees, essentially do whatever they can to save money and keep themselves in business. So the issue with this, Greg, is people saw the sports bubble bursting, and apparently everybody but Sinclair saw it coming. And now here we are where they could take a lot of the TV revenue from the regional sports networks, Greg, are a big part of the operating revenue for these professional teams.
Oh, for sure.
So it's fascinating to see how this is going to shake out, because Major League Baseball has already put together a committee, I guess the best way to put it, that Chris Ilitch is part of, about how to move forward here, as to maybe they need to take the rights back and start selling their local rights themselves. The NBA is also looked into this kind of thing as well. That may apparently talks are not going well with Sinclair for obvious reasons. But I know we're kind of getting the weeds with the financials here, but essentially in the end, the worst case scenario is here, 3 Detroit teams take a massive financial hit, and that it has you wondering how that could affect how they operate when it comes to player contracts, how they operate, to how the front offices are being staffed, and for that matter, how we're going to watch them in the future if this all falls apart.
Well, yeah, I mean, the television dollar, as you know, and you mentioned a couple seconds ago, is so prevalent in how these teams function. I mean, not that any of these teams are going to go to the poorhouse necessarily, but yeah, I
Hey,
mean,
Greg, can you stop there for a second?
Yeah,
I lost your connection.
Okay.
So can you start from the beginning? Give me
Sure.
about 5 seconds and start that over again, okay? I don't know what happened. I got connection lost, probably on my end. So
no problem.
When you're ready, fire away.
Absolutely, what you just said a moment ago. I mean, the television dollar is so important and so prevalent to how these teams function. And it's not just the national money that is spread out amongst all the teams, in this case, Major League Baseball. It's like you said, the regional dollars as well. And not that these teams are going to go in the poorhouse, of course. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, but
yeah, they're owned by billionaires, for Christ's sake. But
of course. But what you don't want as a fan is you don't want your owners to have any other excuses for not spending any money. Okay.
Exactly.
And that's what I think now it's going to affect different markets differently, of course. And I think that's what maybe, and this isn't, by the way, this isn't really getting a lot. It's getting some traction now. I'm noticing it's starting to be talked about more, probably because the baseball season is getting closer. But it had been one of those things that kind of was in the shadows. Nobody's really talking about it too much. Everybody knew that Sinclair was having some issues and so forth. But now it's really starting to kind of bubble to the surface. And I think the fear might, for a market like Detroit, and with a team whose fan base is so sensitive right now, and so its nerves are so just raw right now with the rebuild and all sorts of things, and their dislike of the Chris Ilitch ownership and so forth, is they get really, I think, extra sensitive about this kind of a thing when these kind of stories come out. We'll talk a little bit about the on-air talent in a second, the on-air moves that they made. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I think kind of, as we get closer to the baseball season, is going to be more in the news, and it's going to cause us another level of angst for people, because not everybody wants to. You mentioned the cutting the cord and so forth, but a lot of people, Al, don't want to do that. They don't have the energy. They don't have the energy to go scouting out for other places, to other ways to watch television. They're still kind of tethered to the whole notion of, this is how I watch television. I watch it with a cable service or with a satellite service or whatever. And they don't want to be bothered with going out and hunting for other ways to watch. And so, and Frank, to be honest with you, I would sometimes try to tune in on the Tigers games with my Bally Sports app. And sometimes, not just the Tigers, but other Detroit teams, Red Wings and so forth. And I find that app not the greatest either.
It's horrendous. You're being generous.
And it's not, to me, it's not very intuitive. The feed that I get sometimes, this might be on my provider, which is DirecTV. Maybe it's the interface between DirecTV and the app. But I have tuned in many times to that app, and I'm watching games in low res. I feel like I'm watching them on 4th generation VHS tape or something. It's ridiculous.
Don't forget to rewind.
Yeah, right. And so I'm disappointed in the quality of the feed that I'm getting. And I don't even mess with it half the time. I don't even, it's like, it's not even worth my while. I just assume checking on the score on television, on, tune it in or just check it on Google or something. But it used to be, I was really excited when I got that app because I can watch these games wherever I want.
Yeah.
It's a smaller screen, but who cares?
Mm-hmm.
And when I first got the app a couple of years ago, the video quality was outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
And now I just can't find a good feed. I can't find a good. I'm getting these low res images,
Yeah.
and it's really bumming me out.
Yeah. Yeah, because I went through this with my father. My father's 82 years old, and he's a
Yeah.
Tampa Bay Rays fan.
Right.
And obviously there it's Bally Sports Florida and Bally Sports Sunshine or something like that. And he wanted to save money because he was paying a ridiculous amount of money for his as you said, cable. You know, he had a cable box and the TV service.
Yeah.
So I said, well, Dad, I can set you up with YouTube TV, and that alone will save you like $30 to $40 a month, but you won't get Bally Sports because Bally Sports, in their wisdom, essentially cut ties with all the streaming services, and are you going strictly through your app, wanting to buy it as a standalone option? So I said, and he was all for it, so. I need to save money here. So, okay, I said, I'll get that all set up for her. And he handles YouTube TV, no problem at all. But so it was when I did all this, it was towards the end of the regular season of last year. It was late last September. And so I go, Dad, we can get you to the end of the season. We'll set you up on the Bally Sports app. They sell a standalone package, $19.99 a month, and you'd be able to watch whatever's on that channel. Specifically, in his case, he wants to watch the Rays. Oh my God, what an absolute nightmare it was setting up that app. And and he has a Roku television. Guess what? At the time, Bally Sports didn't support Roku, which is everybody has a goddamn Roku, and Bally Sports didn't support the Roku system. So I had to set it up. I had to set it up to where he could watch it on his on a Fire Stick, but now he has to deal with my 82-year-old father having to deal with switching inputs and all that crazy bullshit.
Right.
That was ridiculous. And let alone, as you said, the app itself is non-intuitive. The streams are iffy at times, and it's not well thought out at all. Mm-hmm. So thing is, though, Greg, I'm going to have to fly back down there probably late March and do it again and set it up for him because I can't do it. It's going to be impossible to do it remotely. It gives me an excuse to go to Florida anyway, but still. But the point is that just how badly run Diamond Sports / Bally Sports is run. That everything is half-assed with that group, especially when it comes to the consumer part of the deal. And the fact that they're losing money hand over fist, I don't feel for that company one bit, because this is what always gets me about these stories, Greg. Now I'm going to get slightly political here. Mm-hmm. When a business goes bankrupt, you know what they call it? It's a business strategy. We're restructuring. When a person goes bankrupt, it's a moral failing.
Right.
Why?
Right.
It's a business decision. Right. That has always bothered me about these things, about how these corporations, and who knows how this is going to affect people that work for them, how it's going to trickle down to all the way down to the consumer. And it's ultimately people are going to get screwed. Yet nothing's going to happen to Bally and Diamond Sports and Sinclair in the end. They're still going to be, they'll still be in business, in other words. So that's one thing that's always got me about this, how they treat this like, oh, it's a business strategy. We're just this is just a temporary setback. But when a person is forced to declare bankruptcy, which 90% of the time is because of medical bills, they're considered, there's something wrong with you for that happening to you. It's your fault. Right. And I hate that. So that's why I'm reveling in this Bally Sports implosion right now. But you make a great point, though, in that in the end, this is going to screw over the consumer, and who knows how we're going to be able to watch it. I'm one of those people, Greg, who does jump through the hoops so I don't have to deal with them. I have ESPN Plus to watch the Wings, and I have NBA League Pass to watch the Pistons, and I have MLB.TV to watch the Tigers. But to be able to use those, I also have to pay for a VPN so I can hide the fact that I'm in Detroit. I usually have to set it for when I'm in Chicago or Buffalo or something, depending on who they're playing. Okay. But and that is something a lot of people, that's too complicated for them. Most people don't want to deal with that. Like I said, I got the Wings game on right
Right.
now. And it's on ESPN Plus, not Bally Sports, which is confusing to people. This whole thing, Greg, the way
Right.
sports television and the rights fees and the carriage fees have gone, in the end, all it does is piss people off because they can't watch the games they want to watch. And really, in the end, a lot of these teams are cutting off their nose to spite their face for some short-term revenue, and now it's coming back to bite them in the ass, and they have a bunch of pissed off fans.
Yep. Well said. It is confusing. Tigers games last year. I remember the Tigers. There was I want to say it was in New York. I'm sure it was in New York.
Yeah.
The Yankees last year. It was a
On
3 or 4
Peacock.
games.
It was on Peacock.
Yeah, there were 3 or 4 games in that series, and 2 of them at least were on
Peacock
weird,
or something like that.
Weird, weird places that that normal
well,
regular
YouTube
Red Wings
TV was
Tigers
YouTube
fans.
proper was another one. That was They had like 3 or 4 different games where they were on things you would never think to look at. You're right. It's very confusing.
And didn't they do some? I think one of those games started at some weird, like 11:30
in the morning. That was the Peacock game because I was at Florida for that, watching that.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. But
yeah, the whole thing is just And at the very least, I think we have some good news from Bally Sports, Greg, and that would be they shook up the Tigers broadcast booth. Jack Morris, also known as the old man who yells at clouds and is very occasionally, I wouldn't say occasionally, very occasionally, he's a racist. Just going back to that Chinese crack he made a couple years ago. Well, he is not going to return in 2023. Thank God. There's one. Just to go on a quick tangent, to see Jack Morris work in the media after being a complete horse's ass to the media that covered him for his entire career, I still find that mind-blowing. But regardless of that, Jack Morris is no longer going to be in the employ of Bally Sports. We won't have to deal with him anymore. So now the broadcast team is Matt Shepard, and it is what it is apparently at this point. No fan seems to really enjoy Matt Shepard, Greg, but Bally Sports seems to think he's doing a good job, so he's keeping the job. I think he's the quote-unquote, he's a good hand, even though I don't think I don't think baseball is in his wheelhouse. Replacing Jack Morris, Greg, is Craig Monroe. He'll become the primary in-game color guy. Kirk Gibson's going to keep his role. They say he's probably going to do about 30 games or so. And obviously, Gibby isn't what he used to be due to the Parkinson's. I'm in the minority when it comes to Gibson, Greg. I think he's still very good. I seem to learn something whenever he does a broadcast, but the Parkinson's has changed his speech patterns, and that seems to annoy a lot of people.
Right.
Which I think it's horrible, but whatever. Dan Petrie is going to be the primary guy in the studio now, and he's done a pretty good job. Cameron Maben is going to be the new face. Well, actually, 2 new faces. Cameron Maben, who worked for the Yankees on the Yes Network last year, he's going to be working for the Tigers this year. Obviously, isn't it like his 10th time joining the organization? Something like
right.
And of course, the roller coaster himself, Todd Jones, is going to be an in-studio analyst himself. And say what you will about Jones, who knows what he'll bring to it, but at the very least, he has a big personality, so that should help the broadcast, you would hope. Apparently, majority of the games are going to be called by Craig Monroe and Matt Shepard. Petrie and Maben will rotate into the TV booth occasionally, and obviously Gibson will work as his health permits. So in the end, it's a good thing, Greg, that Jack Morris is gone, because I don't think he brought anything to the broadcast. And I would also add this. I think it's about damn time they started the move away from the 1984 era guys and getting some fresher, newer, younger perspectives into the broadcast.
Well, here's the thing about the broadcast. First of all, I do share your opinion about Morris, and I really even kind of share your opinion about Gibson. And the reason why I do share your opinion about Gibson, is because I feel the same way as you do I feel like he knows a lot about the game without putting it in your face that he knows a lot about the game. If that makes any sense. And maybe that's part of the Parkinson's thing, is he's not really is they kind of tamps him down a little bit, but I feel like he does know, because he does, and he was a manager, and
he was a manager and a bench coach,
right, and I just, what bothers me about baseball broadcasting in general, now, there's a lot of good ones. I wish the Tigers had the team that they have in New York with Gary Cohen and Ron Darling and Keith Hernandez. I think that's a great dynamic. But
they're like the one of the, they love them in New York, and that's his value right there.
Yeah, but the thing that here's the problem though, is that the way that the game, Al, is moving toward metrics, and more than ever before with launch, and I'm not even talking about the stuff like war is considered. That's
mainstream now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this with launch angles and exit velocity and all these other types of metrics that they have nowadays. Unfortunately, what that does to a broadcast, and you mentioned the younger viewpoint, and I agree about that. However, the caveat to that is that what comes with that younger viewpoint is this other stuff that nobody can seem to shut up about. And I wrote an article about this last summer. I said, why don't these guys ever just shut up? Baseball is a sport. Now, this is going to be this is my old man at the cloud thing, because I admittedly am
just no Chinese jokes, okay?
No. I admittedly, I know I'm stuck in my old way. I understand that. I completely embrace that, really. But I do think there is something to be said, though, for saying that baseball is a sport that should be broadcast at a different speed, if you will, than other sports, because of the nature of the game. Now, you can put all these things in there. You can stuff in all these metrics. You can stuff in all your different numbers and your different graphs and your different whatevers. And I appreciate that. And I know that that winning baseball is often tied to having these really brilliant young minds in the front office who decipher all this data. I get it. That's fine. That's completely fine. But it's seeping into the broadcasts now in such a way, it's insidious almost. The stuff that just gets thrown at you as a baseball fan. Let's face it, most baseball fans, Al, who watch the game on television are for the most part casual fans. I mean, in the sense that they don't pore over all this stuff. They don't go to Baseball Reference. They don't know all these numbers. They don't pore over charts and graphs. They just want to settle in and watch a ball game. And that's the way the game should be broadcast, is at that kind of a lazier, slower pace. But what we're doing now, and what these broadcasts are doing as well, with things like Pick the Stick and all this other crap that they do, is that the broadcasters are inserting themselves into the narrative. And so now they're talking sometimes just to hear themselves talk, I think. And guys like Monroe, who I like Craig Monroe personally, not that I've met him before, but I mean, he seems like a good enough guy.
He dresses nice.
I mean, no, he seems like a nice guy. I'm not disparaging him as a person, but the problem with Monroe is he's another one of these guys that just can't let the game breathe. He's got to talk between every pitch about everything. And baseball is a 3.5 hour. That's the other thing. A typical baseball broadcast from beginning to end, even if you want to say from first pitch to last pitch, is a 3.5 hour ordeal, usually 3 to 3.5 hours. So for 3.5 hours to be talking that much about a game whose very essence is slow pace. Baseball's been accused how many years now of having a slow pace. Well, the pace of the game is slow, but the pace of the broadcasting is not. And I'm talking about everything from graphics to the Pick the Stick thing, to the announcers inserting themselves, to even the play-by-play guy, Shepard, who can't seem to shut up either. Now, I could live with some of this stuff if these players, now all these broadcasters we're talking about, except for Shepard, of course, all these color guys are former players. And yet what I'm not hearing enough of now, Craig Monroe, and you've heard me talk about this before, but I'm going to say it again. Guys like Monroe, who've been to a World Series, Kirk Gibson, who's won a World Series, Jack Morris has won a World Series, Todd Jones has been to the World Series. Now, a lot of these players who have done great things in their career, and not just in Detroit, but throughout their big league careers. You would think, would have a lot of stories to tell about their playing days. And that's what I always was attracted to about George Kell and Al Kaline was George Kell, even as a play-by-play guy, would sprinkle in stories of his time as a player with the Tigers and with other organizations that I found fascinating. I thought they were, they weren't even that long. They were just like, almost like anecdotes. He would just drop in an anecdote every once in a while about playing for Fred Hutchinson or playing for Red Rolfe or these other guys. And I just loved that. And it would come out of the blue. He would just all of a sudden say, "Oh, I remember when 1948." And then he move on to and he wouldn't stick with it for very long, but it was just enough of a flavor to remind you and remind a lot of the viewers who may not have known that George Kell was a big league ball player and a very good one. Okay. And he had all of these great stories to tell. Kaline told stories. And I'm not hearing anything from Monroe, Petrie, who's won a World Series, Gibson, and all these other guys.
Right.
I don't hear enough of that. I would love to hear more stories from Gibson and Petrie and Morris et al. About what it was like playing for Sparky. I would love to hear stories from Monroe talking about Leland. I would love to hear stories from Monroe about Sean Casey and about Kenny Rogers. And I would love to hear stuff like that. And all I'm hearing about is the metrics of the exit velocity and what the next pitch is going to be. And Morris, who just has to predict every pitch and talk about every pitch that was just thrown and then preview the next pitch that is about to be thrown. And it's nonstop for 3.5 hours. And I can't do that. To me, that's not a baseball broadcast.
Yeah.
That's just not a broadcast to me. The broadcast never is allowed to breathe. And then you've got a million graphics going on. There's got animation and graphics and it's to me, it's overwhelming. And I just don't think it befits the nature of the game. To me, it's a round peg in a square hole. And I think that is what I have a beef with. And it's not just Detroit. I'm not going to pick on just Detroit. I know this goes on. I'm sure it goes on in a lot of different cities, but we're only talking about Detroit, of course, right now. And I wish that the broadcast, I think a lot of these guys would be much more tenable if they would just let the game breathe a little bit. And I know what's going to happen this year with Monroe.
Yeah.
He's going to be constantly jabbering into the microphone about God knows what. And it just,
I can imagine that.
And then you mentioned Shepard, who I agree with you. Matt Shepard has been a really good utility man in his career. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I mean, he's one of these guys that's a kind of a jack of all trades, a master of none. And I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Shep because he does a lot of Eastern Michigan games, or at least he has in the past.
Right.
And I just think though in baseball, he's that style that he brings is just a little bit, it's just awful. There's just not a really good fit.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he gets a lot of static from the fan base, because I just don't think he's well suited. It doesn't mean that he's a bad broadcaster.
No, because I've heard him do basketball and football, things like that.
I just don't think that he's cut out for baseball.
Yeah. It's funny how you're describing a broadcast. You're describing how Vin Scully used to do a broadcast. He would tell stories, but he would also tell you what's going on in the ball game. And it was amazing that he did a lot of his broadcasts by himself and managed to keep it fascinating like that. But, or for that matter, we're lucky here in Detroit, you got Dan Dickerson on the radio, who was very good at that sort of stuff. And he just said he's not always feeling the need to talk, which is, especially, which is hard to pull off when you're doing a radio, theater of the mind, so to speak.
Right.
But we're blessed to have a guy like Dan Dickerson in Detroit and I hear people say, well, why don't they just move Dickerson to TV? Then you'd absolutely ruin the radio broadcast. Who knows who would you get to replace him? And that is another topic, is that, how much longer are they going to roll Jim Price out as the color guy? He's not doing road games anymore for the most part. He's my father's age. He's like 81, 82 years old.
Right.
He doesn't even do all the home games anymore. Last year when I listened to some of the radio games, they were actually bringing in beat writers in the middle innings to discuss what's going on with the Tigers with Dickerson during the games. I think on the radio side, as much as we've seen a TV shakeup, we're going to see a shakeup on the radio side, not with Dickerson so much, but with who works with him. Because I know last year they rolled. I know Petrie's done some radio working with him. I know Alex Avila did some radio with them last year, as did Maben, I believe. Yeah. So if something's going to happen there, you have to wonder if sometime soon they're going to get the old nudge, it's time. You're 81 years old. It's time, and you can't even do all the duties that you're supposed to do at this point because you're not traveling anymore. So, as good as and Jim Price is what he is. I don't think he's a particularly insightful broadcaster, but he's kind of colorful and he's got his catchphrases like Yellowhammer and the art of pitching and that kind of stuff. But if there's going to be another change in the broadcast booth, that's probably where it's going to come. But
that's a good point you made about Price not being necessarily all that insightful. But don't forget that we come from the Ernie Harwell, Paul Carey days of radio, which you rarely heard Paul chime in when Ernie was doing.
No, it was essentially they did each inning by themselves.
Occasionally they would pop in and say something, occasionally, but exactly. It wasn't really necessarily insightful. It was just popping in to say something.
They were two play-by-play guys, essentially.
Right. So I don't know that you need to be particularly insightful on the radio as a color guy, because the reason for that is you don't have the benefit of visuals, you don't have the benefit of graphics, you don't have the benefit of replays. So I don't know that you necessarily have to be insightful as a radio guy in baseball. I think what you need to do is kind of be that nice glove that fits real well, that just kind of is there to kind
sidekick.
Of
the sidekick.
A sidekick, exactly.
Don't be the Robin to Dan Dickerson's Batman.
Right. You don't need to be. You don't need to break everything down and be necessarily. I just don't think you need to do that because I just don't think the medium is built for that. I think you just what you want in a radio color guy for baseball is just, it's hard to do. I can't find the word that I'm describing, but just that buddy that sits next to you that just kind of you bounce things off of, and he occasionally chimes in, and he might of course describe a play and that was a good defensive play by so and so because blah blah blah, but we don't have the visuals on a radio broadcast. We don't have a visual. We don't know what he's describing. We have to rely on a description by the play-by-play guy, and then the color guy comes in and says, went to his backhand and that was a tough play because, but okay, whatever. But you don't have to go. You don't have to be particularly insightful.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and also with that, Dan Dickerson, he's peppering advanced metrics in his broadcasts far more than I hear a lot of guys do. Dickerson knows what he's talking about. No, he knows how to use OPS plus, or when to use WAR, when to bring up BABIP, batting average in balls in play, stuff like that. That's why he is so good. Is that he has put more tools in his toolbox the longer he's been broadcasting, because he wasn't doing that when he first started, when he first took over for Ernie Harwell. So I don't have a lot of complaints. I have no complaints with the radio broadcast, because Dickerson is so good and Jim Price is essentially institution. But the TV broadcast, they started to shake up, but they should have went further. Seems like they could do better than Matt Shepard. I don't think Mario Impemba was the best guy out there, but he was far better than Matt Shepard. I wouldn't say Mario Impemba was in the top tier of baseball broadcasters, but he was definitely better than how Matt Shepard does a game. I guess the only question is the way Shepard calls a game, is that because that's how he does it, or is that because that's how Bally Sports wants it done? And I guess that would be the only question I would have when it comes to how Shepard calls games.
Well, I lay some of the blame on what I was talking a few minutes ago about. I'm not hearing these guys tell stories, and I lay a lot of that blame on Shepard. Yeah, he should be the one that brings that out of these guys.
They talk about boats and golf.
Yeah, and the stupid pick the stick thing and everything. I mean,
I hate that with a passion.
Shepard should be saying, in the 2006 ALCS, when you guys played the A's and blah 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 blah, and he should be drawing that stuff out of guys like Monroe. Right. He should be, getting. I don't care if he goes off and gets Monroe on a thing where Monroe's talking about Jim Leland for an entire at bat, through the entire at bat, while
Mm-hmm.
Shepard's calling pitches. And as we see a guy at the plate for 5 or 6 pitches, we hear Monroe talking about Jim Leland.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love to put the metrics on hold, put the spin rates on hold, and I want to hear about some behind the scenes stuff about Jim Leland.
Yeah.
Stuff that he can share, of course.
Yeah, there's probably a happy medium there somewhere, and they've never been able to find it. You're right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying, litter the broadcast with that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not hearing any of it. And I just think that that's the kind of stuff that would make, if you just kind of had a more of a balance between all the spin rates and all the launch angle
Mm-hmm.
stuff versus just good old fashioned, there's a difference between metrics talk and baseball talk, if you know what I mean. Baseball talk is what George and Ernie and Al and those guys would do, and Vin
Mm-hmm.
Scully and so forth. And metrics talk is what they're doing nowadays. And I just think there should be more of a balance between the two.
Yeah. It's and that is one thing. Everybody has their own take on the broadcast. Everybody takes it a little bit differently, but at least they're doing something, and we'll have to wait and see if it actually works out for the better. Hey, but I would say right now they're already ahead of the game of getting rid of Jack Morris, so we'll see. Well, like I said, we'll know in a few weeks when we start seeing some broadcasts from Florida, and we'll see how well the Shepard-Monroe pairing goes. But right now, the jury's still out, but a thumbs up from me from getting rid of Jack Morris, and we'll go from there. All right, one more quick Tigers thought, Greg. The Tigers farm system, guess what? Was ranked dead last by the Athletics' Keith Law. He's not the only one. I believe Baseball Prospectus had the Tigers ranked 30th. A few others I have out there. Some of the ones that are being a little more generous have them in like the mid-20s, give or take. Yeah. But the summary from Law, and I don't always agree with how he puts it out there because he can be very abrasive.
Yeah.
But I tend to also agree with what he has to say. No, he's one of those guys where everybody thinks he has a bias against their team. And it's like, no, he's not afraid to piss you off by his true feelings.
Right.
But his summary was pretty brutal. It was ugly. He goes, and this really drove it home was the first line from the Athletic. From the 2016 through 2021 drafts, Detroit's top 3 picks by WAR are Tariq Skubal, Casey Mize, and John Schreiber, who was signed for $6,000 in the 15th round. Their international free agent classes have been totally unproductive, and we haven't seen many players get better once in the system over the past decade, whether they come in as reasonably polished players or not. Specifically, look at someone like Spencer Torkelson. There will be a lot of high draft picks to come. It's lean times ahead in Detroit, unfortunately. And some people get upset at this, and I'm like, I don't see any lies here. Supposedly the top prospects that the Tigers have all graduated. Skubal, Mize, Torkelson, Green, Manning, a few others out there. Soto, so on and so forth. And what do we have to show for it? Jack and shit for the most part. And I don't know. And I think it's probably a combination of some bad drafting, also a combination of, and we've gone on this before, Greg, about the players just didn't seem to get better once they got in the Tiger system.
Yeah.
The JD Martinez is one of the rare exceptions to the rule. Yeah. But Baseball Prospectus had a very similar take. If you look at the Zips and the Steamer projections for this year, they're talking if the Tigers are lucky, 70 wins. So between the projections and the farm system rankings, this might be a couple lean years for the Tigers right now. I know there's some guys out there say, well, they could be better. For example, I just happened to turn on Pat Caputo while I was making dinner tonight, and he was doing his Tigers talk show, and he was trying to, I think he was just blowing smoke up our asses by saying, well, Green could hit 20 home runs, and Casey Mize could be an ace, and this and that and the other thing. And it's like, yeah, if all that happens, they might be a 500 team, So it starts from the bottom, and the bottom is how you develop your players in the minor leagues. And the Tigers have a bunch of guys. They have a bunch of guys in the system right now who might end up becoming average major league ball players. And yes, you need those kind of guys, like a No, right now Colt Keefe is the guy that we're all talking about. And best case scenario is, maybe he's Jamer Candelario, but slightly better. But they need impact prospects, and those guys have all been brought up, and none of them have lived up to that yet as being an impact player. So it's really an ugly situation when it comes to this to the foundation of the Tigers found system right now. It sounds very ugly.
Yeah, and it's really discouraging because of all the lean years that the team has had and all the high draft
picks they had.
But I think really what this really boils down, I know that the minor league thing is definitely a concern. There's no question about that. When you've got that many experts pegging the Tigers that low, that's definitely a concern. But I think also I think that's a symptom of a problem for sure. But I think that the getting to the heart of the matter more than that is the lack of development. That's the draft. The minor league thing is one thing, because you can have a really good team at the big league level and have a crappy minor league system. And that's not unusual. That's I mean, you can have a playoff team that's perennially in the playoffs, and then say, well, gosh, that's great. They're doing great at the big league level, but their minor league system, there's nothing there. They're 28th, 29th, once this core of players moves on or is broken up, look out. But to be non-competitive, which essentially the Tigers have been for the last several years, and at the big league level, and then find out that there's not, that's very disconcerting. But to me, the bigger problem is what you said about the lack of development. Guys not getting better.
Yeah.
You start to wonder about the Torkelsons of the world and the guys like that, and all the injuries they've had. That is, to me, more systemic. Because I think minor league systems kind of go on peaks and valleys. It's kind of like bullpens in baseball, if you want to use the same sport. They're mercurial. You can have a good minor league system for a while, and then it nosedives because the guys that were really good get called up to the big league level, and then now that you got to kind of start over again.
Right.
It's hard to maintain for any number of years in a row really good, quote unquote good minor league system.
Right.
In any scenario. But what's worse, a bigger indictment of the Tigers organization is the lack of development, the lack of being able to. It's not just, by the way, Al, it's not just the drafting. Everybody talks about drafting, and that's true. And that's a big resource for players. But the Tigers have also made a lot of trades where they've traded established big league players and gotten low-level to mid-level minor league players back. And those guys haven't developed either. I mean, now some of them have been hurt, true. But a lot of these guys have not amounted to much. And that was the problem with the team in the 70s. You and I have talked about this a million times. The teams of the 70s, before the 84 batch of players came in, they couldn't develop players either. That period from 68, I would even go actually before 68, maybe 66, 67 to like 76, 77, there wasn't much going on there either as far as developing players, getting any help whatsoever for the minor leagues. And the guys that did come up, they weren't getting any better with the Tigers organization. And we're seeing it right now. Same thing over again. That's, to me, the biggest indictment. There's something wrong. There's something wrong there. Now, Scott Harris obviously has his work completely cut out for him.
Oh, God, yeah.
You mentioned a couple of years of lean. That's being generous. I think that this is, unless something unforeseen happens, and then Harris does some stuff faster than I think he can do it. I hate to say this is another 4 to 5 years before we're going to see anything that really is close to a playoff team. That's my opinion. Now I could be wrong, but I don't see this happening in anything less than 4 or 5 years from now.
Unless like Torkelson and Green blossom immediately into all-stars or something like that. What are the odds of that? So I'm with you there. It's that you were probably more right than I am when it comes to we could be talking 2030. By the time we have a contender here or something like that, who the hell knows at this point? Hell, by the time there's a contender, maybe Casey Mize will have moved on as a free agent at this point. So I don't.
Well, it's really too bad because this is, I think, inarguably one of the better baseball towns in America.
Yep.
And it's too bad that such a baseball town should be saddled with this product for this many years.
Yeah.
I'm also concerned that the team is hemorrhaging fans that they may not get back because there's been so much apathy. And I understand, I get why. I get it. I mean, the problem with baseball too, Al, is that it's not when you're bad at baseball, it's interminable. The seasons are interminable because it's 162 games and 162 games of badness.
And the season's over in May. Yeah.
Right. And it drones on. The season drones on. I look back to those back in the 40s and 50s when you had perennial losers like the Phillies and the Browns and there's some other teams and there were just Kansas City A's were always the worst of the worst year after year after year. And they were just fodder for all these other teams. And you knew going into spring training that those teams were going to lose 90 to 100 games every year without fail.
Yeah.
And part of that, of course, was the reserve clause. You couldn't move, or players couldn't move around, of course, on their own volition. So they were slick to being traded or so forth. And minor league systems weren't nearly as polished back then as they are now. So, but now here it's just too bad that this great baseball city is kind of dying on the vine with this withering of. I look at the Tigers as a withering vine. Now, could it regenerate itself? Sure. Now, will the fans come back if this team starts winning again? Yes, but I still think that there are a lot of fans who have tuned this team out and are not coming back, certainly in the next couple of years. We were talking about Bally a little while ago.
Yeah.
Whether it's watching on television or attending the games or having any sort of vested interest whatsoever. I'm seeing fewer and fewer. I used to always see Tiger gear on people.
Yeah.
Just out and about when they're going to the store, going to a restaurant, where Tiger gear, their Tigers jerseys, their hats, whatever. I'm not seeing that very much anymore. And I get it. I understand why. Yeah. There's no pride. And I get it. Why would there be? I mean, there's this, we're talking about a team that a few years ago lost 117 games or 116 games or something. And it's really, it's a shame because this is a big time baseball town, and they're just begging for something to cheer for, and there just isn't anything there.
Yeah, and just to drive that home, look how excited people are over the Lions,
right?
For going 9-8. People have lost their minds because they are so desperate to have something positive to talk about.
Sure.
And we're not getting it from the Tigers. And lately we haven't been getting it from the Red Wings. How's that for a segue?
Yes.
We have, on our last show, Greg, the title used in the notes was Dylan Larkin's contract status in limbo. Well, I just kept it and said Dylan Larkin's contract status is still in limbo. But the difference now is he's coming off a huge All-Star game weekend. I didn't watch the All-Star game because I really don't pay attention to that. Plus, I was at the cabin anyway, enjoying very, very cold weather and a foot of snow. But he had a hell of a weekend. He was named one of the NHL 3 stars. A lot of people thought he should have been the MVP. He scored 5 goals in 2 games, had a hat trick in the last game. So far, contract talks are supposedly still ongoing. Any deal is expected to be in the $8 to $9 million year range for 8 years. If he becomes an unrestricted free agent and signs with someone else, he's limited to 7 years. So if to make the most amount of money, he has to stay a Red Wing. if he gets the contract term he wants. Well, kind of throwing a monkey wrench into the Red Wings' plans here, or whatever line in the sand Steve Yzerman has drawn. A very comparable player just signed a new long-term contract. The Islanders' 27-year-old center, Bo Horvat. He's very, he's considered like a Larkin. Like, he's a one. He's a 1 or 2 center, and they just traded for him from the Canucks. As the Canucks are blowing things up, but they signed him, Horvat, to an 8-year, $68 million contract with an $8.5 million cap hit through 2030, 2031. So that's essentially the sort of money that Larkin's looking for. But Horvath is having a career year. He's on pace to score 50 goals. If you look at his career numbers, his points per game average is lower than Larkin's, 0.68 to Larkin's 0.73. Horvath's goal scoring rate is a tad higher, 0.32 to 0.29. But Larkin, who's a year younger, is also considered to be a much better two-way player. In other words, Larkin plays defense. He backchecks. He does all. And plus, he's the captain of the damn team. Right. He's the face of the franchise.
Right.
So Larkin's been asked about it. He's saying all the right things. And the Red Wings literally say nothing about nothing at this point, Greg. This is Steve Yzerman. If he held his cards any closer to the vest, he'd be on his back at this point. So, but the thing is, though, Larkin's like, yeah, I should get at the very worst deal the same contract as Horvat, and honestly, he should probably get a better contract because he's younger and a more rounded player. So it really makes you wonder. Now, right now, there's still talk that the Wings are in the low 8s, and Larkin wants 9, and maybe they'll end up meeting in the middle. But the market's been set for a player similar to Larkin. And it looks like that market is $8.5 million a year. And what gets me is I see some fans online, Greg, I don't know if you've noticed this, saying, oh, that's too much for Larkin. Okay, so what do? You trade him for draft picks, which you'll be selling low because he's going to be he's going to be a free agent, so he's a rental. So you're not going to get max value for him. Or you let him walk at the end of the season, and then what? How do you replace him? Well, you go to free agency, and you're going to pay more for a center. So really, Larkin holds a lot of leverage here, Greg. The Wings don't have an in-house replacement. To replace him in free agency would be ridiculously expensive, probably more than it would cost to sign Larkin. And the fact that he is the captain of the franchise. So it really makes me wonder, let's get this done. Because they can't go to the trade deadline with this not taken care of. And the trade deadline is like less than a month away at this point.
It would not surprise me if we woke up tomorrow morning with the news that he has signed, because that's, you mentioned Yzerman being close to the vest and so forth.
Yeah.
I really don't have any doubt that this is going to get done. I think that this is it taking longer than we thought? Yeah, maybe, sure. But I don't think that we're in that mode right now where we should be worried that this is even going to happen at all. They're going to sign him. I don't know particularly. I don't know why particularly it's taking this long to do it if the sides are relatively close.
There's like what? They're talking like what, 500?
It's a drop in the bucket, really. And I don't know why it would come to this point necessarily. You mentioned Larkin saying all the right things, and he is, and to his credit, he is. And I don't really get necessarily what the motive or incentive would be for the Red Wings to be dragging their feet on this. Why
piss off your best player currently?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know why that would be. I hate to default to my "in Steve we trust" thing, which means that anything that Yzerman does is the right thing.
Yeah, I think that ship is sailing right now. It really is.
So I can't explain it. I really can't. All I know is that I'm sure it's going to get done. I am not in any way worried that that the Red Wings are going to not do this, and that they're going to somehow let him slip through their fingers, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because of all the factors you mentioned, being the captain and being relatively close to the money, and and Larkin has the leverage, and there's
And
not
let's
an
not
in-house
forget he's a
replacement.
lifelong
And
Michigander,
yeah,
so
I
yeah.
just it is kind of it is a little weird. And I can guarantee you that even when it does get done, and when it is announced that he signed, we're still not going to know why. We're still not going to get any insight as to what took
Hmm.
so long.
Right.
There'll be a lot of you know, gray rocking by Iserman, and there'll be a lot of it'll just continue to be left to conjecture. But the bottom line is, he will, at that point, he will be signed, and we can move past it a little bit. But as far as Horvat go, I know that the Red Wings had shown some interest in him before
Yeah,
the
you're right. There
Islanders
was
traded
talk
for
that they
him.
might have wanted to trade for him.
I don't know. It's first of all, it's not Dylan Larkin's fault
Yeah.
that he is by default the best player on the team. It's not his fault. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not his fault. I mean, he can only do what he can do.
Right.
Just because he's the captain and not in the top echelon of NHL players is not his fault. That's that's an indictment of the franchise, not on him.
Exactly.
So he's doing whatever he can do, and I give him a lot of credit for bouncing back from a really crappy year or 2 years ago, where he was. I know it was the COVID year, but he was really not very good, and he came back, bounced right back last year.
Yep.
Had a great year last year. Not as great of a year this year, but is having a good enough year that.
But to his defense, who's playing next to him?
Well,
Verona, who we'll talk about shortly, has been gone. Bertuzzi has been hurt. The whole top six has been shaken up, and about the only constant they've had is Dylan Larkin in the top six. And again, as you said, that's an indictment on the Wings, not Dylan Larkin. You put Dylan Larkin on a better team, I bet you he does score 40 goals, if probably more. But he's been stuck in this ugly rebuild, and no fault of his own.
Right.
And honestly, he's outperformed his draft position. If he was redrafted, he would be a top 3 draft pick at this point in his draft, probably. He went like 18th or something like that when the Wings took him years ago. So, but I guess the issue is, you can't. The problem this is what I see with fans. Well, he should give a hometown discount. Why? Why should he give a hometown? Well, he said, Stamkos did it. Yeah, because they were like this close to winning a Stanley Cup. The Red Wings are like this away from a Stanley Cup. So why should Larkin sacrifice $1 million a year, or if not more, with no guarantee, with them being a million miles away from winning the Stanley Cup at this point? That's one thing I hate about fans. I see this a lot with Jared Goff as well. He said, if the Lions with the Lions extend Jared Goff, they should sign him for $30 million a year. So I think just put it. So if he's playing as well as he's playing right now, and he's playing at a top 10 level this year, and he does it again next year, and you extend him, why would he take the same amount of money? That makes absolutely no sense. I mean, all you have to do is go back to Matt Stafford. He wasn't coming off a great year, but he was the next starting franchise quarterback in line to get a new contract. And guess who became the highest paid quarterback in the NFL? Matthew Stafford, because that's how it works. So asking players to take a hometown discount or some sort of pay cut for the good of the team, when most of the time the team does not repay that loyalty, is utter stupidity. So I have no problem. If Dylan Larkin wants to take the Wings for all he can get, he goddamn should. And, okay, sure. Okay, what's $500,000? Okay, sure. When you're making $9 million a year, whatever. Okay, we're talking about that. But asking a guy to take millions less is damn stupid and idiotic. And I see that from fans all the damn time. And Larkin should get what he deserves. He is played for what's been a shitty franchise the past 6 years or so, and he deserves what he can get. I hate fans who play the salary card. It just drives me up a wall.
Yeah, I exactly. You know what? And one of the reasons why it drives me crazy. Well, there's a couple reasons. Number one, why can't we get past the salary thing? I mean, that's been going on for for so
decades.
long. Right.
Yes.
And Nick, you know what? Who cares?
They're like, El Kaline didn't make
You know,
100 grand. Well,
it's
yeah,
not,
they didn't have union. Their
it's,
unions sucked back then too. Yeah.
it's not coming out of your pocket. Now I know the fans will say, "Well, yes, it is coming out of my pocket. If I go to a ball game and a hot dog is $7, well, how many people go to the ball game?
Yeah.
How many people go to the ball game?
Yeah.
How many people go to a Rebels get what 17,000 fans a night, 16,000 for whatever it is? Okay, you know what the percentage is of 16,000 fans going to a game, who these concessions affect,
Yep.
versus all of us other slobs that are watching these games on television or following at home, who are not shelling out anything. None of this. That's the other thing that drives me crazy is that with what you're saying about the fans is they act like it's their money, like they're coughing it up. And the other thing that drives me crazy about it is they never say anything about this about other entertainers.
Yeah.
They never say, gosh,
that
Ben
Tom
Affleck,
Cruise shouldn't be making $20 million a film.
Why is Ben Affleck being paid $20 million to make a movie? Nobody says anything about that.
Right.
Nobody says anything about that. That's what drives me crazy too. Is and the other argument you'll get, you mentioned the Al Kaline thing.
Yeah.
The other argument that you'll get from this is the one that really cracks me up is, well, teachers are our real heroes.
Yeah.
Firefighters are our real heroes. They should be making $8-9 million a year. Like, really?
Yeah.
Really? And then my retort to that is, okay, you show me the day that a firefighter, 16,000 people pay $30 a head to watch a firefighter fight a fire, then I'll listen to you.
Yeah, and the other thing is, say what you will, yeah, they do deserve money, but there's vastly amount more people that can teach or be a firefighter that can play in the NHL. It's market.
There's that what you just said, and there's this thing called capitalism and this thing called what the market will bear.
Yep.
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like this whole I have the same retort when people say, well, the football program at the University of Michigan, all these millions of dollars, and they're so powerful. I say, you know what? Let's see you fill Michigan Stadium with 100,000 fans watching biology students do a biology exam.
Right. Yeah.
You do that. You charge $50 a head and get 100,000 people into butts in the seat to watch a biology major do his thing or her thing. Then I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
Other than that, no.
If they want to do that, they could go watch Intramural.
I don't like making that argument because it sounds like I'm disparaging. It sounds like I'm disparaging these people who are working very hard to be doctors and be scientists and all these great things that we all need desperately. But you made a very good point, which doesn't ever get talked about, which is the percentage of people who are good enough to make it to that level of professional competition that we're talking about versus, again, I hate to say this because I want to sound like I'm disparaging, but versus the people that are, like you said, teachers and firemen and so forth. It's just no comparison. There's just no comparison. So I'm with you on the salary thing. I completely am with you there.
All right. We're starting to run short on time, so let's move on to what is going on with Jacob Vrana. Actually, we don't know. From all accounts, he looks like he's no longer in the Red Wings plans. When we last talked, Greg, he had just been put on waivers. He was in essentially injury rehab, coming off of the player health wellness plan, where we don't know what was going on, if it was an addiction or a family problem or something. Regardless of that, he was off for a significant amount of time. He went to rehab at Grand Rapids, and then the Wings suddenly put him on waivers. No one picked up his contract, so they're still on the hook for like $5 million and change next year. But there's a lot of rumors going around that he is persona non grata with the Red Wings, or vice versa. But he's playing in Grand Rapids. He's being paid. He's still under contract. He has 6 goals in the last 7 games, which you would think is, that looks like a guy who's ready to come up. But every time there's an opening in Detroit, he's never mentioned. And they've made some transactions, especially if the season second half just started tonight, and Vrana's still in Grand Rapids. Well, there's a report, a commentator at SiriusXM's NHL network, Nick Algebra, I believe that's how it's pronounced. And he is reporting, he posted this on Twitter, that Vrana will likely either be traded by the deadline or be bought out this offseason. And right now, I don't see anything that would refute that because the Wings haven't said a thing about it. but putting him on waivers says volumes. And what also says volumes, Greg, and apparently this looks like the second franchise to want to wash their hands of this guy. Because remember, the Capitals, the main reason they said they got rid of him because he didn't perform in the playoffs, but they had issues with him. So the Wings got him they traded Mantha, who they had issues with here. Because essentially they're hoping for a change of scenery, helping both players. I don't know what's going on. There's all kinds of rumors being thrown around out there, but whatever it is, something's up, and it probably ain't good. But no one on the Wings, with Steve Yzerman on down, is saying or confirming anything, and they're right, and that's probably the proper thing to do. But it really does raise a lot of question: is what's going on here and what has happened? But it's looking more and more in the fact that he's played himself into shape. He's playing well down there, yet the Wings have not called him up and don't look to be calling him up anytime soon. It really looks like this relationship is on its way to being, it's going to end and end badly.
Yeah, it does look that way. Sometime, somewhere, I don't know when. I think we'll find out what really happened with this whole Vrana. Maybe years down the line, I don't know. Maybe somebody will come out with a book. I don't know, but we'll find out. The story will come out eventually. It may be long after he's out of Detroit and out of the Red Wings fans' consciousness and so forth. But I think it will eventually come out. Now, but for right now, yeah, it does appear that, and I'm trying to read between the lines when I read what Coach Lalone says. And
he's been asked about it, and he said, "Oh, he's played well down there." And
that's
that. Yeah.
But he's also said, well, he's also went a month without scoring a goal. So our players are constantly developing. But a lot of gibberish. Okay,
coach speak.
Which is right. But he also says, Lalone says, and he said the same thing about the Larkin contract. So that's why there's a coach, and that's why there's a general manager. Okay.
Yeah.
But right now, the general manager isn't really saying much. But I don't think we really need to. We can speculate all we want about the reason why Vrana is not in the plans. But I think you're right that it does appear that he isn't in the plans for whatever reason, and we can only presume it has something to do with something off the ice. Now, I will say this too. Don't forget that he was not particularly well liked in Washington either. He has issues with management and coaching staff at the Capitals. There was some friction there, and they didn't like his body language. They didn't like some other things. They washed their hands, all too willing to get rid of him for Mantha, who, by the way, also had some issues with his effort and so forth in Detroit. Exactly. So, in a way, it was kind of like a trading two bad apples for each other, which oftentimes does happen, and sometimes it can work out for the best.
Right.
But I think Vrana, there's something about this guy that I think is going to catch up with him. And what I mean by that is he's going to run out of chances. I mean, there's going to be a time where now there's guys like Dennis Cholowski who run out of chances because their on ice performance isn't up to par. But a guy like Vrana, I think, is going to run out of chances because he just has something. There's something about this guy that I think, and I'm not going to sit here and say that this leave of absence that he took when he went into the substance abuse program, whatever that program was.
Right.
I'm not going to suggest for a second that was his fault, that he did something wrong, that he was a bad apple necessarily, but there's those kinds of things just don't do you any favors when you've got a lot of other players who are trying to make their name in the NHL. So I think based on what happened in Washington, now you can say this is one of those trades you can look at and say, geez, what was Yzerman thinking? Well, he may not have known, or maybe he thought that a change of scenery would do, because Vrana's very talented. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, when this guy's on, he's a
top of line forward.
Oh yeah, he can score goals real fast.
Yeah.
But the problem is that is it worth the other stuff that he may be bringing to the organ? Maybe Yzerman thought that it was, maybe he thought it was a bad apple for bad apple trade, and that maybe the change of scenery could do both players good.
Right.
And it unfortunately has gone off the rails with Vrana. But initially, when they first got Vrana, he was great. Yeah. Right, he was outstanding. Yeah. Then he got hurt, and then this off the ice stuff happened. So I think that it's easy now to say, well, he shouldn't have traded for the guy. But I think Yzerman was thinking that there was maybe he had the key to unlock this guy, and that they could, and then maybe getting out of Washington. And that's happened many times. You get a guy out of an organization, and let's face it, Washington had a lot more. Their standards were a lot higher there in terms of winning now. I mean, they're about Stanley Cups, and I mean, they're not just trying to make the playoffs; they're trying to win the Stanley Cup every year. Right. So that was part of it, I'm sure, was that maybe he just didn't handle that real well, and he didn't handle the, if there's a personality clash with the coach, that's not necessarily anybody's fault. It just that's just the way it is. So, but yeah, I agree that there's something amiss with him, and I don't think he's going to be a Red Wing either.
Yeah, but I do think it is interesting that I'm getting tired of hearing the Yzerman we trust and the Yzer plan kind of stuff because like any general manager, they make mistakes. They aren't infallible. Yzerman, excellent general manager, but he has made some questionable moves in trying to move this rebuild along. But you could say that about any general manager, but I think we have to be a little more realistic about Yzerman, how Yzerman is rebuilding this franchise. It's not. I have a feeling it was further, not as far along as many fans believed at the time, and a few of these guys that they thought were going to be part of the new of a rebuilt team may not end up being part of that, such as Bertuzzi. And hell, maybe even Larkin. For next time we talk, Greg, maybe Larkin will have been traded. I don't know, because we don't know what Yzerman thinks about this franchise, and the players and most of the players that he inherited. The players he's drafted look like they're really going to pan out, but some of his trades, the Varana trade looks like it's blown up. The Delkovic trade looks like they're done with him. They said that they got maybe a half of the season of goaltending out of him, and the wheels came off on that trade. Some of his trades haven't really worked out for the best. I mean, he's made some good ones, like getting Adam Ernie and Robbie Fabry and a few other guys. But that's the thing with rebuilds. I guess we all have to remember, even if you have what is considered an elite general manager, rebuilds are not linear. They are up and down and up and down. And I think we've kind of hit a down point with the Red Wings rebuild.
Yeah, well, you know what though? I hear what you're saying about not all the trades have been great, but I would counter that by saying that what separates the cream where the cream rises to the top when it comes to executives are guys who know when to cut bait and realize that they've made a
that's
mistake.
a great point.
And what? Geez, this the Delkovic kid. I thought he was going to solve our goaltending problems.
Yeah.
Or at least at the very least be half of a good tandem. When geez, it didn't work out. To me, the bigger indictment is when you have a guy. When I say a guy, an executive who just hangs on and hangs on and hangs on, doesn't know when to get rid of a guy. And I know that's easier said than done. It's easy for me to sit here and say, you got to know when to.
All you do is look at the past 5 years of the Tigers and the damn prospects that kept rolling out over again.
Right. Oh, how many? Yeah, the Victor Reyes of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easy for me to say, you got to cut bait on these guys sooner, but it's not. I'm not in that role, so I can't say for sure. But that to me is if I've got a GM who says, look, I'll use Ron as an example, and also Delkovic, although Delkovic is still, I think he's still got a future with the Red Wings, even though he was put on waivers.
Yeah,
I think that if those are the guys that Yzerman has not been seemingly not willing to just keep hanging on to. I mean, I think he's kind of realizing, well, maybe not. Maybe that wasn't the right thing, and I've got to move. When you're in a situation like the Red Wings are in with this rebuild thing, you don't have time to putsy around waiting for guys to. That's why it's such a vicious circle. You mentioned it not being linear, and that's right. But what happens when you're in a situation like the Red Wings are, especially with a franchise as proud as this one is that there's a sense of urgency. Now, when he went down to Tampa, nobody gave a shit about the Lightning. Nobody cared. Right. Yeah. That team may have dropped out of the league. Nobody would have noticed that they were gone. Okay. But the thing is that that's you can rebuild differently when the expectations, they didn't have a million banners hanging from the rafters in Tampa when he went down there. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you go to LCA and you see all these banners and all these cups and all this stuff. There's a the Red Wing thing is very strong, the mystique.
Yeah.
So that changes. It's one thing to, I'm not down on Yzerman. I'm just saying it's different to rebuild in Tampa when nobody even cares if you're even in the league versus when you're coming to Detroit, which was made the playoffs for a million years in a row until recently. And now all of a sudden you're tasked with, you're a former Red Wing player. You've won Stanley Cups in this town. You're revered by the local fans. And even if this goes kaput with the rebuild, Yzerman will still always have a warm place in the fans' hearts for what he did as a player. But that's a different kind of you can tend to make decisions under those, and we tend to think of Yzerman as cool as a cucumber, but you can still make decisions under those circumstances. And don't forget, he came in after the rebuild essentially began. No matter what anybody wants to say, this rebuild did not start with him. This was in process before he got here. So now he has to take a rebuild that somebody's already begun, even if it was unwittingly began, Kenny Holland, and now push it forward with using his own. But people tend to think the rebuild started the day that he signed his contract. It's not true. It was at least a season before that. So all that taken into consideration puts a lot of it's a different deal. I give him all the credit in the world for what he did in Tampa. Don't get me wrong, but it's different. The first 3 or 4 years, who cares? Nobody cared about the Lightning. They kind of snuck up on everybody, and now they've got a winning culture there. Of course, they're one of the best, perennially one of the best teams in the league. So people want to see the same kind of results here that he got in Florida, and that's just it's not necessarily going to be the case.
Yeah, it is what it is. And plus, the other thing, the rebuild was, as I said, was less further along than it was in Tampa. They didn't have a Stamkos here. Hell, they don't even have a Martin St. Louis here.
There you go. So, right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. With that, I think we'll save the Pistons talk to our next show, Greg, because we'll have the trade deadline to talk about. Well, if the Pistons do anything or not. Right now, most of the beat writers are expecting a very quiet trade deadline unless they get an offer that blows them out of the water, either for Sadiq Bey or Bogdanovich. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. So we'll talk. We'll have some pitches talk on the next episode when after we have some post trade deadline stuff. So I think with that, it's time to wrap things up. So who is your jerk of the week?
This is kind of low-hanging fruit, and I feel like I've done this.
Well, that's the best tasting fruit, so go for it.
And I feel like one of us has done this before, but Darius Slay, as you know, is in the Super Bowl with the Eagles. He's having another very good year. He's performing at a high level, considering the fact that he's on the wrong side of 30. He's still a very productive, good DB, and is no small part of why the Eagles are in the Super Bowl. And to hear him still this many years later, although it's only been a couple of years, 2 or 3 years now, still use Matt Patricia as his inspiration. In a way, it just shows me I am no lion slappy, as you know, but my jerk of the week, by the way, is Matt Patricia, to make a long story short, because of Slay. It still sticks in his craw that Patricia told him in a one-on-one meeting, "You are not an elite corner." Now, I don't know why he said that to him. I don't know if that was his way of motivating this guy, or if he thought that saying that was going to get him, Slay, to improve or be better. I don't know what the motivation was. Or I just tend to think it's just Matt Patricia being Matt Patricia, which is a pompous asshole, essentially. And I think that I look back at his very short, thank God, a short time here in Detroit, less than 3 seasons. But the amount of damage he did by driving Slay out of town, Quandre Diggs out of town, a couple other guys too. And I know we've talked about, this is not news.
Those are 2 Pro Bowl a Pro Bowl safety and a Pro Bowl cornerback.
This is not news. I mean, we've talked about this before with Patricia, but it's just coming clear to me now when I see Slay talking about how I was born for moments like this, and to be in the Super Bowl, and I still can't get over what Matt Patricia said to me. And he's still using that,
Yeah.
3 years later. And I just don't know how this guy Patricia has been able to stay in the league. And then there, of course, the whole thing about the sexual assault thing. You and I have talked about that.
Yep.
But after he got hired by the Lions and they looked the other way with that. And I don't know how this guy, he was a disaster with the Patriots as offensive coordinator. The Patriots fan base was ready to hang him in effigy. They were just ridiculous. I don't know how this guy Patricia stays in the league. I really don't.
Yeah, he must have something on Bill Belichick. It's all I get.
I mean, I'll tell you this: where there's smoke, there's fire. I can guarantee you that Darius Slay is not the only, and Quandre Diggs are not the only two players who Matt Patricia has rubbed the wrong way. Now, you can say all you want about, well, some of these guys are prima donnas and no coach can get along with them. I don't believe that's the case with Slay, and I don't believe that's the case with Diggs. I think there are some coaches that go out of their way. To rub, I don't know what it is, to get under players' skin. I don't know. I remember Don Shula one time was talking about how, and I don't necessarily agree with this, by the way, but Don Shula was talking about motivating players. And he said, what I would like to do, the way I got guys going, he said, I would get them so mad at me that they would take it out on the opposition. Now, maybe a guy like Shula can get away with that because he has the credentials.
Yeah, that's the Scotty Bowman.
Right, exactly. Right. But some guys don't have that mystique about them. They're just jerks. They're just jerks. And I just feel like, I guess the reason I'm making him the jerk of the week is guys like that who just seem to go out of their way to rub their star players the wrong way. It doesn't make any, I don't know if they're stupid or if they're pompous or if, I don't know what it is, but there's something wrong about that. And I know that there are a lot of other players who, if they were to tell their stories about Patricia, even guys who maybe won Super Bowls in New England, would say, get them a couple of beers and they would start talking about this guy. And I would suggest to you that a lot of players in the NFL, I don't think he's very well liked. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think he's very well liked. And not that you have to be well liked, but I don't think he's well liked. And I don't know why he keeps getting jobs. I really don't.
Yeah. And what's funny to bring him up is that apparently the character Matt Patricia is a huge plot point in the 80 for Brady movie for some reason. So that's just weird. What does Matt Patricia have to do with this 80 for Brady thing? Obviously, the guy playing for him is much skinnier and much better looking, but regardless of all that. But yeah, I'm with you there. The fact that the Lions had 2/4 of a Pro Bowl backfield, and he chased them out of town. And then, of course, they take that Pro Bowl cornerback and draft a cornerback 3rd overall, who's essentially a bust at this point. So, yeah, we could add Matt Patricia to our perennial list, along with Carlos Monterez and a few other guys.
Right.
We'll just add him to the list. Okay. My jerk of the week, I go with some low-hanging fruit and someone who's been there before. Well, he's part of it. I'll go with the Dallas Mavericks and Kyrie Irving.
Okay.
Isn't it funny, Greg, that there always seems to be a franchise or a general manager or a coach who thinks, I can fix him, I can control him, when no one has been proven to be able to control or fix Kyrie Irving, who admittedly is an immensely talented ball player, but he is an immense pinhead as well. But the Brooklyn Nets finally broke up their super team, and they traded him to the Mavericks. The Mavericks gave in return Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a first-round draft pick, and multiple second-round picks. They gave up a hell of a lot for Kyrie Irving. And admittedly, Kyrie Irving, when he's playing well, is an all-NBA level talent. But he is when you look up knucklehead in the encyclopedia, there's his picture. When you look up idiot online, you'll see his picture. You know what his latest stunt is, Greg? So after he had to apologize for all his anti-Semitic stuff he had posted, and he apologized and he put it on his Twitter. Guess what got deleted today? His apology for all the anti-Semitic stuff he did.
Wow. That's interesting.
How many more chances is a guy like this going to get? And why do franchises feel like these guys deserve chances? Kyrie Irving has proven, and the numerous franchises he's been with, he's a locker room cancer. He is divisive to the fan base, and those teams never, ever live up to expectations. But like I said, there's always someone out there who says, I can fix this player, I can control this player. And the Kyrie Irvings of the world refuse to buckle under and will always and forever be knuckleheads. So my jerk of the week is the Dallas Mavericks, and I guess I could say Mark Cuban for approving the trade. And Kyrie Irving, I think we would also add to the Matt Patricia and Carlos Monterrez onto our onto our jerk of the week perennial list. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope I don't have to talk about him for a long time after this, but knowing Kyrie Irving, we'll be talking about him again next week. So anyway, with that, Greg, let's wrap this puppy up. So why don't you get out the thank yous and what else we might be able to look forward to?
Sure. Thanks to Coach Creighton from EMU for spending half hour with us on his birthday, no less, to talk EMU football and go over, answer all our questions, and as gracious as ever. And good guy, and we're really always in his corner. So good to see him get some get that bowl win and so forth. Nobody on the docket yet. I don't have anybody planned for the next show. We'll see what happens. So follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno, and of course my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. Check that out as well. I'd appreciate that. I want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with all this nonsense, and you, Big Al, for making Tuesday night so gosh darn fun.
Yes. Thank you, Greg, for taking time out of your busy schedule to of being essentially the manservant to Bean. He's so cute. You can't help but take care of him. But thanks for, and of course, thank you for lining up Coach. He's always fun to talk to. I'll give a shout out to my girlfriend Linda, who is recuperating from our trip up north, and she goes back to work tomorrow. And congratulations to her for getting a new gig, or she's transferring to a position she's been wanting for some time. So hooray! And as always, thank you to the listeners for putting up for bullshit for the past 14 years. May there be another 14 if we last that long. So we're not getting any younger, Greg. I'll tell you that much. So anyway. So I guess it's time to get the hell out of here. So until 2 weeks from now, I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about when it comes to the NBA trade deadline. Maybe the Pistons will be up to something. We will have to wait and see. We'll talk about that. And plus, we'll be close to pitchers and catchers reporting. So we'll talk more Tiger baseball, I am sure. So until that time, 2 weeks from now, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks.